You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Ooh, a spicy question. I
because
love
the
it.
writing is sort of everything, right? Like you kind of can fix plot holes, but if the writing is
so some readers love that, and some readers are like, "But I wanted more of this." So it's kind of a gamble.
Hello and welcome back to the Right and Wrong podcast. On today's episode, I am joined by a best-selling fantasy author who is publishing novels both independently and traditionally, calling from all the way across the world in New Zealand. It's Helen Scheuerer. Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming on. Let's dive right in with the new book, Iron and Embers, which comes out in the UK on the 6th of February. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Iron and Embers is the first book in a trilogy called The Ashes of Thesma, and it's actually a spin-off from a previous series called The Legends of Thesma. That's a quartet, and all 4 books are out at the moment, and it takes the sister of the main character from that series, and she's the protagonist in this, and it's set 5 years later. I think it can be read as independently from the previous series, but there is a bit of crossover and stuff. So if people did want to read that first series, I would read that first. But Iron and Embers is about an assassin turned alchemist with a dark past, and she's sort of forced out of isolation when a mysterious form of alchemy threatens the realm. And to gain entry into an elite academy and find a cure for that, she's got to survive some deadly trials while navigating political intrigue, magical attacks, and most dangerous of all, an explosive attraction to the man tasked with protecting her. So it's a very high stakes fantasy romance where magic, revenge, and forbidden love collide in a world teetering on the edge of chaos. So that's the elevator pitch for you.
Okay, amazing. That sounds great. It sounds like it hits all of the things that you're looking for within the sort of epic fantasy romantasy genre. Like you said, this is the first of an installment of 3. So within the Thesma universe, so there will be 7 books in the Thesma universe once this is finished.
There'll actually be 8. So there's actually the original quartet. There's a standalone prequel called Slaying the Shadow Prince, and then there's this new trilogy as well. So yeah, 8 all up.
Okay, very cool. Was it always, when you kind of created the Thesma world, was it always your plan to kind of explore it through different characters and different journeys?
I think it sort of came about quite naturally. So originally I wrote Blood and Steel, which is the first book in the Legends of Thesma, and within that the main male character references a mentor that he had a bit of a tense relationship with towards the end, and that's all we really hear about it. And then funnily enough, like an opportunity came along that I was asked to be a part of a multi-author series, and so that is when a bunch of authors get together, and in my case, it was everybody writes a standalone novel, and it just had to fit the theme, mortal enemies to monster lovers. And so I wrote a standalone set in my universe, which turned out to be that mentor's prequel story. And so we meet a lot of the characters that are in the Legends of Thesma and the Ashes of Thesma in that prequel, but it is a standalone, and it's the story of the mentor Talamir Starling in that. So it was kind of like he was always in it, but this like unique sort of opportunity dropped in my lap to then be able to say, I'm going to write a standalone about Talamir. And then over the course of writing the 4 Thesma books, I could kind of see where I was going to pick up certain characters later on and who had the potential to have their own series or their own standalone. So it wasn't like the intention when I started Blood and Steel to write 8 books, but it kind of progressed naturally from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. So you're writing the sort of core story for the Legends of Thesmar, and as you're going along, there's a sort of side character that pops in every now and again, and you think, there's a lot more to explore here, but I can't do it right now. I'm going to have to do that somewhere else.
Exactly, yeah.
I noticed that you mentioned that there was a few characters. Are you planning to do more spin-offs within this universe?
The potential is there. And that's kind of all I'll say at the moment, because we're only, a couple of weeks away from releasing book 1 in the new trilogy. So, and we've got books 1, 2, and 3 to go. So I don't want to say too much too soon.
Okay. And are you planning annual releases, or are they going to be sooner than that?
No, so actually, like you mentioned before, that I'm independently published and traditionally published, and The Ashes of Thesmar is my first sort of true hybrid release of those two. So I'm independently publishing in the US and Canada, and then Tor Bramble, which is an imprint of Pan Macmillan, publishing in the UK and Australia, New Zealand, and Commonwealth territories. And I think they've got some open market territories as well. And so as part of this sort of collaboration with Tor Bramble, they've agreed to match my publication schedule as I would have put out indie publishing wise. So I've got Iron and Embers coming out in February in the UK, and then book 2 in July, and then book 3 in December. So we're getting the whole trilogy in 1 year, which is, quite unusual for traditional publishing. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. It's so interesting. Yeah, the hybrid style, which I think is becoming more appealing to a lot of authors kind of around the world. It's so interesting that you've got, you're releasing it US and then UK, it's coming out with Tor. Is it the same book that's coming out with both, or are there differences? Right.
On the covers, like they're very beautiful. They've done a really wonderful job. Whereas my indie versions, I can't put foiling. So it's exactly the same cover, but just there'll be some metallic accents on my covers that are just flat print, and on Tor Brambles it's foiling and embossing and some like fancy little detailing there. And then and the only other difference is house style, really. So for me, because I'm publishing in the US, I'm using American spelling, American style, for example, double quotation marks for dialogue, whereas previously when I was writing Australian UK spelling and style, they use single quotation marks for dialogue. And so those are the types of differences. But in terms of story, it's exactly the same.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. So presumably you worked with, and did you work with an editor at Tor to kind of finalize that?
So by the time we'd signed the Tor Bramble deal, I think Iron and Embers, I'd already written and had it edited by my editor as an indie, and their editor read it. I think we had very, very minor feedback, just tweaking a couple of things, and a lot of it was so minor. It's things like you guys would say trousers, in America they call it pants, but pants for you guys is undies. So little tweaks like that. But that's kind of it. And then when we moved on to book 2, my editor at Tor, she looked at the first draft and we went back and forth a little bit, but it wasn't as extensive as I thought it was going to be with a traditional publisher, just because we're in like a different sort of stage. I think if I had have been with them from the very, very beginning, it would have been a lot more developmental feedback, but it was much lighter than I expected. But I mean, it's going through them from a first draft level to then a proofread as well. So it's still getting like the same sort of points in the production schedule, I think.
Okay, that's really interesting. Yeah, this kind of hybrid stuff is sort of for a lot of the time, I mean, with publishing, lots of things, everyone does things in a different way, but doing the hybrid thing where it's like partially independently and partially traditionally, it's sort of untrodden ground in a lot of ways. Like everyone's kind of figuring out how they want to do it as they're doing it. It's really interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's experience is different. Like I know a lot of authors who are doing a very similar thing, selling rights in particular territories, and it just depends. Like sometimes the author will just go through their entire usual editorial process as an indie author and then hand over the final manuscript, or sometimes the publisher will take that editorial responsibility on and work with them and cut out the previous production stuff the indie did. So it really depends on, the preference of the publisher and the author and the contract that they've signed, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. When it comes to, you were doing very well indie publishing your own novels. What was the kind of nudge that made you want to sign with Tor Bramble?
I think it's a couple of things. I've been indie publishing for over 8 years now, and I'm a full-time author. The previous series, Legends of Thesma, is my most successful series by far. And I've sort of, I guess, with that, reached a point where I've done everything that I can to get myself into traditional retailers and bricks and mortar stores. And it's really, really hard as an indie author to shift print units in that way. And so what Tor Bramble sort of brought to the table was that they've got retailer relationships, they've got warehousing, they've got distribution in a way that no matter how sort of successful I was, I couldn't quite do that myself. And also, like we mentioned, the differences like treatments on the covers and like nice bells and whistles that I couldn't necessarily do myself without doing a full-blown special edition and, launching through Kickstarter or something like that, for example. So that was definitely part of it. And also being able to keep my US rights, which is my biggest market, and it's where I make a big chunk of my income. I thought that having the opportunity to keep that while sort of dipping my toes in the water with traditional publishing without risking my entire livelihood, that really appealed to me. And I spoke to the team at Tor and they were really enthusiastic. They loved my books. They'd read all of the previous Legends of Thesma books. And we talked for a very long time, and my agents and I went back and forth. Like these things, they take a very long time. And we sort of came at it from all different angles and had multiple meetings. And in the end, I thought it was a safe way to see how I felt about traditional publishing, because I was very happy being independently published. I make a very nice living off it, and I like the creative control as well. But it sort of appealed to me, I guess, in the way that it offered a way I could level up my career in a way that I wouldn't be able to do just by myself, I think.
Yeah. And like you say, the perfect way to do it, where it's sort of like you're getting both, you're having your cake and you're eating it. You're getting to try it whilst also, maintaining all the rights and indie publishing it in certain territories. Yeah,
exactly. And with this particular deal, I had already sold the audiobook rights to Dreamscape. Okay. And so it's quite rare that you can get a traditional deal that doesn't then include selling your audio rights. And so it was quite good that, they wanted the UK, ANZ, and I'd already been paid for the audio, so that was out of the picture. And it was just sort of said to me from my agents that, this is quite a unique position to be in, and it's a good opportunity. And so we thought we'll go for it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was talking to Travis Baldtree recently, who also started off publishing independently and has since moved into traditional publishing. And he was saying one of the big reasons for him going there was that the access to translation rights and access to getting the book into different territories. Is that something that Tor has spoken to you about, potentially reaching beyond like US, UK markets?
Funnily enough, I had already started doing that prior to the Tor deal. I think once like the series started gaining traction, the opportunities start to come to you, which was something that actually got told to me a couple of years ago. I had a coaching session with another very successful author, and I said to her, I'm really interested in, branching out into foreign translations. How do I go about it? Like, I do have an agent, but, there's, not much interest there. And she just said to focus on the work and getting that current series to do well. And once that did well, people will start to approach you. And she was right. And so I was lucky that, Legends of Thesmar did quite well. And I've got a really wonderful agent who managed to get several foreign translation deals before the Tor Bramble deal went through. And actually they're not part of the foreign translation deals, at least not with my particular contract. So my agents are shopping out all of my books to foreign markets outside of Tor Bramble. So it's a completely separate thing.
Oh, I see. So you had an agent whilst you were independently publishing, but did you, and that your agent is Ezra Ellenberg.
Yes.
Did you look for an agent so that you could do that, so that you could kind of get into those other territories? No,
so I've had I think what I've realized later on is quite an unusual experience in that my first series, which was a young adult fantasy series called the Oromir Chronicles, the first book came out in 2017, and that actually did quite well. And I was approached by an agent back then who must have been watching the charts and sort of keeping track of what was doing well and what was gaining traction. And so I signed with her it must have been just after that release, so maybe early 2018, and she brokered the audio deals for the Oromir Chronicles and then the second series, Curse of the Siren Queen, both of which were young adult fantasy. And then as Legends of Thesmar started to come out, I had a French publisher contact her, and we signed the French deal, I think the first half of what then became a bigger French deal. And then somewhere in there, I changed agents to Ezra, and ever since then he's taken over all the translations. Like, he's shopping it around, and I mean a lot of the interest has come directly to us, because I think the foreign publishers are watching the charts, looking at what's doing well on social media and what people are talking about, and what sort of sparks their interest. So it's a combination, but Ezra's done a wonderful job getting translations. We've got I think French, Italian, German, Ukraine, Czech, Hungary, Russia, and a couple more that I've got contracts in my inbox, but not actually put the signing on the dotted line yet. So it's done really well, and I wouldn't have been able to do that without him, because it's very complicated and overwhelming with all the legal jargon. Yeah. That's where agents are a godsend. Yeah, getting through all that mumbo jumbo. Exactly. And I can't remember. Did you say or not? Did Tor approach you, or was that a deal that Ezra had gone and found? I think Tor approached Ezra. Right. Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, I was. I can't even remember when this was. I think I might have either have just published the last book in the Legends of Thesmar, or it was just about to come out. It was sometime last year. It all kind of blurs together. But yeah, I think they published. I'll start that again. They approached Ezra because I was all set to independently publish Ashes of Thesmar, and I was actually intending on publishing it quite a bit sooner, but then we started the conversation, and we wanted to give it as much time as possible, so I pushed it back. Okay, right.
Yeah, it does sound like this kind of journey of yours has been, build it and they will come. And you've just kind of focused on, like you said, focused on the work, put out the series, which with each series kind of grew a bit more. And now, yeah, people coming to you for their requests is amazing.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. Like I'm very lucky that it's happened that way. I think I was very happy doing my own thing, and I just sort of kind of put my head down and just went along. I love being my own boss. I love organizing my own team. And actually, funnily enough, the first series that I did well, and the second series didn't do as well. And so there was like a bit of a dip, and in terms of income, in terms of confidence in myself and all of that kind of thing. And then I made the switch to adult romantic fantasy romance. And that was sort of like my big swing of trying to get back in the game. And it did quite well. So it is still up and down like any sort of writer's career, I guess.
I mean, yeah, these things are unpredictable. And I don't know if if you find this, but, for the most part, when it comes to a series, the subsequent books in a series don't tend to get picked up as much as the initial book. Is that something you found, or do you find that you kind of maintain readership across a whole series?
I think my like in indie publishing we call it read through. My read through is quite high. And I mean, that can be for a range of different reasons, for example, for the last little while, I've released quite close together. And so by the time, say, the first book comes out, I've got the second book up for pre-order, and that link for that pre-order is in the back of that book, so that when they literally finish the end, want to know what happens next, here's the next book, and they can pre-order it, and they see that it's only 4 months away, or it's only 5 months away. And I think that definitely helps, because people are less likely to forget that they've read it or forget that it's coming out, and the story and the characters are still fresh in their mind by the time that it does, rather than if you wait a couple of years between releases. So I think that's definitely helped me. But I think generally book ones are the big splash, but if you continue on to book two, generally I find my readers, if they're continuing to book two, they're continuing the whole series.
Yes. Yeah, I imagine if you get them into the second one, they'll go the whole way. That's
yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. And it makes sense as well with the release schedule, because I read a lot of fantasy, and there's a few series where me and the rest of the fans have been waiting 10 years for the third one to come out or whatever. So
I wonder which one you're talking about.
No names. Awesome. We're at the point in the episode where I maroon you out in the middle of the ocean and ask you, Helen, if you were stranded on a desert island with a single book, which book do you hope that it would be?
That is such a hard question. Maybe Outlander, the first Outlander book. Yeah, it's nice and chunky, so it's almost like a couple books in one, and it's a really incredible blend of history and romance and just found family, like all the stuff I love in fantasy romance, you get it in Outlander. And I just sort of feel like if I was on a desert island, like for who knows how long, I could be reading that over and over again and still each time pick up new things, because she's just incredible at like the historical detail, the outfits, the medicinal herbs that somebody would use back then. And like it, I mean, maybe it'd even be informative in that way. Who knows?
Help you survive out there.
Yeah.
Learning from Outlander. No, that's a great choice. That's a really good one, actually, because you get the blend of timelines and like different periods and things. Yeah, cool choice.
Have you answered that question on this show?
I have answered it. I imagine like a lot of people, especially people into reading and writing, is if you asked me next week, it would probably change. But
yeah.
my go-to answers would either be The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or Small Gods by Terry Pratchett.
Okay,
So
very good.
very English, very very British light comedy based.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might be a bit upset being deserted on a desert island, so you got to keep yourself entertained.
Exactly, got to be entertained by another English person complaining about mildly inconvenient things in the UK. Because that's all it is, really. Awesome. So coming up, I've got some questions about writing process, creating characters, and world building, as well as Helen's experiences with indie publishing. That will be in the extended episode available on Patreon.
I have a newsletter that I send out twice a month that always includes what's coming up, where I'm at with things, and just being, transparent about where you're at and what people can expect. And I find, in my case anyway, my readers really appreciate that. So I think it all sort of comes together as part of the whole package, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Great advice all around there on many different levels. And that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Helen, for coming on the podcast and telling us all about Iron and Embers and everything that you've been up to and your kind of publishing experience. It's been really, really fascinating and interesting chatting with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to meet you.
And for anyone wanting to keep up with what Helen is doing, first of all, Iron and Embers out February 6th in the UK. You can go and get that. I think by the time this episode airs. Also, you can follow Helen on TikTok and Instagram at Helen Scheuerer, or on Facebook at Helen Scheuerer Author, or if you Google her, I'm sure you'll find her website easy enough. To support the podcast, like, follow and subscribe, join the Patreon for ad-free extended episodes, and check out my other podcast, The Chosen Ones and Other Tropes. Thanks again to Helen, and thanks to everyone listening. We will catch you on the next episode.